Welcome to Dub Life Diaries, the podcast where passion meets the open road. I'm Joe Person, your host and also a lifelong dubber. Buckle up because this ride is just beginning. This podcast is sponsored by Volksmania magazine. Good times, great cars, awesome Volksmaniacs. Visit Volksmania.com to learn more about this class-leading VW magazine. All right, welcome back to Dub Life Diaries. Now, most people see an old broken Volkswagen bus and they might think, dang, this is going to be a big project. Not Dave Broenen. Dave saw a possibility. After retiring from a decades-long IT career, Dave took a weathered 1960 panel bus, you see it right behind me here, known as the KRUST bus, and he began chasing adventure all across America. This guy's covered 77,000 miles inside of 23 months, visiting 30 states and discovering something far bigger than classic cars along the way. You guys all know what he found. He found this community, a community that's built on kindness, generosity, resilience, and a shared love for this journey. This episode's going to be packed with some unbelievable stories, some hard-earned wisdom, some hilarious breakdowns, and proof that sometimes the people that you meet along the way actually become the reason for the trip. Dave Broenen, welcome to Dub Life Diaries.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate the invitation to this show.
You are so welcome, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. You're so dialed in, man. I appreciate you. Your IT background, you took the questions I sent you and you reshuffled them and you put them in order. Thank you for your energy and your attention, man. I really appreciate it. Before we dive in, I do want to give a couple shout outs to my sponsors. First up on the list, Volksmania magazine. Issue 26 is on the shelves right now. It's out for summer. It's awesome. Check it out. Check those guys out, Volksmania.com. You can use Dub Life 10. That's DUBLIFE, the number 10 at checkout. You'll get 10% off your subscription. And here's what's cool. Only U.S. subscribers can use that discount code. What is cool is I have to say that because people outside of the U.S. have attempted to use that code. That's impact, and that's actually kind of cool. All right, next up, Salty Dub. From the beach to the bay, Salty Dub is tearing up the coastal, West Coast, Central Florida VW scene. Me and my buddy Alan are actually Salty Dub. We put on some events. We've got 4 or 5 events that we do per year and a bunch of swag. It's all on the website. Check it out, saltydub.com. You can use the same discount code because I set it up. DubLife10, get 10% off your purchase if you're looking for merch. It doesn't work on anything else, so no tickets or anything like that. Last shout out, and then it's back to you, my friend, is Vera Upholstery of St. Pete. Just want to say congratulations to Alan and the team there. Those guys just won the best upholstery shop in St. Pete. They were honored. They got an award for it, and there is no doubt why. This shop is absolutely insane. Some of the work that they do is just absolutely insane. Cars, boats, everything in between, custom upholstery. Check those guys out, veraupholstery.com, VARA. All right, my friend, back to you. Okay,
all right.
Let's get started, man. So for people who are new possibly to your journey, even though it's going to be kind of hard because you're pretty ingrained in the scene already, let's talk about you, man. Who is Dave Broenen for those who are new to the journey?
I'm a guy that likes to drive an old bus around the country. That's the most kind of relevant answer. But yes, you touched on a little bit. I come from an IT background. I used to work at a company called Cisco Systems. A lot of people might know about it. And that's not the one that is spelled SYSCO. Those are the food trucks. I'm talking about IT internet company. And I used to basically teach tech support engineers around the globe how to solve hard problems. So I really had a great career going to all the tech support centers around the globe, and really, really satisfying to help people solve really hard, complex problems using a method that actually cooked up and became the worldwide standard at Cisco. So I was like, I was that guy that taught people how to crack the code on really hard problems, and it was really, really fun.
It sounds like it, man.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
Volkswagens too, because you got to do some troubleshooting along the way.
You absolutely do. So let's go back through your past real quick. Now, your dad and your brothers, they all drove Volkswagens. What was it like for you growing up in that environment?
Well, it was just having kind of the car passion in my family was really satisfying. That plus the willingness to kind of work on your own rigs. Now, my dad had a Volkswagen before I was even born, And then later on, there was a point where my parents got divorced, and my dad was living on very little money because his money was being channeled in different directions, as you
Sure.
might imagine, after the divorce. So he just living on a shoestring. He got another Volkswagen. He got a Beetle. So that brought air-cooled Volkswagens back into our family. And then my brothers, I have an older brother, younger brother. Older brother had a Carmen Ghia, younger brother had a Beetle, and of course I got a Beetle as my first car, a 1967 Beetle. So yeah, they're just sort of the economical car, and they allow you to park pretty much anywhere because they're so compact,
Yeah.
and you can take them off road. I used to take mine on trails that are more meant for foot trails, but I was able to kind of go where no other cars have gone before, you might say.
Yeah, super cool. Something I wanted to touch on was that first Beetle. You just mentioned it, the 67. Looking at your storyline or your past, you said it was a rusty 67. Tell me, what was it about this car that maybe got you hooked?
Yeah, so well, really, it was more, touching back on that concept of being economical. I had a couple $100 to spend for my first car, and I'd shopped for different vehicles, but really kept coming back to Volkswagens. And there's a guy who was a handyman, and he had a '67 Beetle. He kind of used as his handyman vehicle or truck. He took out the passenger seat. He used to put his toolbox and spare materials there. I remember getting the Beetle when I was cleaning it out, when I first got it home. There were all kinds of nuts and bolts and screws and nails just embedded everywhere in the small little nooks and crannies.
Right.
And thankfully, he did have the extra seat, so I was able to put that in. But the car was so rusted. Now, I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota, and in Minnesota, salt is used on the roads to get rid of the snow and the ice to melt it,
Right.
and it's great for that. But it really does a number on metal. It causes rust very badly. And this car, at the time I got it, it was really only about 10 years old, maybe 11 years old. And but it was already so rusted that the fenders were held on with cabinet door hinges. It had like three or four cabinet door hinges along the fenders. So where the body and the fender meet, there'd be a hinge there. And the guy just, unceremoniously just screwed in sheet metal screws to keep the fenders from flapping in the wind or falling off. But the car otherwise, the Beetle ran well. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It really left an impression on me, and I really had a fondness for Beetles from that point on.
Yeah, did you really anticipate or even really know that Volkswagens would become such a part of your identity?
Joe, really not, because that car, being a teenager, didn't last very long. Most first cars for most young men tend to be sort of sacrificial, and so I really only had it for a short time, just one summer, and then after that, I went to air-cooled cars. I bought a '64 Chevy van. I used that to move out to California from Minnesota, where I studied computer science. And several years passed before I got another Beetle, but that Beetle really left an impression on me. And then, gosh, I don't know how long it was, maybe 20 years ago, I found a '69 metal sunroof Beetle to kind of rekindle that experience of having a Beetle again. And that, kind of got me off and running again. Now I got more Volkswagens than I can keep count of at these days.
Yeah, fun. It kind of did the same thing for me in my life. I took some time away. I had my first one right outside of high school. I think I was 17 years old. I got a 72 standard Beetle. And then I had several back in those times in my late teens, early 20s. I got married. I started having kids. As my life started to evolve, I didn't really have room or time for hobbies. I was working, I was raising my kids, etc. Well, my kids are
Right.
all teens now. My daughter's 20, my other son's 18. They're in college, they're doing their thing, they're working in their careers or they're in school. So just a few years ago, I got back into it myself. I bought a 58 Beetle and it just started a fire for me again as well. And since I've had several and similar thing. Now I'm like, okay, what's next and where do we go from here? But let's talk about the KRUST Bus.
All right.
Let's bring it up to the recent times. All right. Where did the nickname KRUST Bus Pilot come from?
Well, that's really, there's I'm going to break it into two sections. Let's break it into KRUST Bus and then Bus Pilot. So
Okay.
it's really kind of a merging of two terms, but let's separate them.
Okay.
The KRUST bus, it has some faux, that's FAUX, faux branding, fake branding on it from the previous owner. And so it says KRUST Repair Company on the sides, and KRUST Repair on the front. So from the day I bought it, I always call it the KRUST bus. And then, so there's really just that. It's as simple as that. And then the concept of a bus pilot, there's actually a club called the Bus Pilots Association, and I guess I'm a kind of a member of that of sorts. And but I think that that term bus pilot is really relevant because when you drive an old Volkswagen air-cooled bus, they don't have a lot of power. The visibility can be limited on some of them, especially like a panel bus like mine. And when you're driving down the road, and really the way you manage the vehicle, really from even before you get in it and drive it, and then while you're driving, that process is not dissimilar to what an aircraft pilot might do. What does an aircraft pilot do before they take off? They walk around their vehicle to make sure everything's intact. They do some maintenance. Like today, I adjusted my valves. I set my dwell and timing, filled my tires because I'm going to go on a trip tomorrow and yet another trip up to Grants Pass, Oregon.
Nice.
And then when you're driving, your head is always on a swivel. You have situational awareness. You're checking your mirrors for other vehicles that are passing on the right and on the left, people tailing you. When you have a grade coming up, you prepare for the grade. Do I need to get a little bit of momentum for that? What about headwinds? What about, and I have an altimeter. I've got a bunch of gauges in my bus, in the KRUST bus, and I have an altimeter because when you're driving a bus, you don't know if you're getting a headwind or you're climbing a grade or both sometimes because you can't always tell if you're climbing a grade. Sometimes you think you're going down here, you're actually going uphill just by looking at your surroundings. It looks like you're going downhill. So much like an aircraft pilot, they need to be looking at winds, they need to be looking at visibility, they need to be looking for other aircraft in the area. Very much the same thing when you're driving a bus. A bus pilot, I think, is a really relevant term, and that's a term I'm always thinking of when I'm driving because safety, situational awareness, being aware of your surroundings, other vehicles, how's the vehicle running? Do you need to abort the road? Looks like an aircraft. If you have a loss of propulsion, you need to prepare for emergency landing. I've had to prepare for an emergency, get off the road moment on several occasions.
Wow.
So it's a really relevant term, and I cite many examples, but I think that's enough to kind of illustrate the idea.
Yeah, no, perfect, man. Very well said. Thank you. I
Sure.
want to talk about how you found this KRUST bus though. How did you find it? What condition was it really in when you, in a sense, found it and or saved it?
Sure. Well, let's start with why I went for it, and perhaps you're going to ask that question, but the why preceded the how I found it. There's an annual event here called the Mount Shasta Snow Trip. Now, I live in Shasta County, California, and every year there is this trip, probably for the last 27 years, I think now, 27, 28 years now, coming up on the 28th probably, is this Mount Shasta Snow Trip. And it's an off-road adventure that happens every February, Super Bowl weekend, which might be late January in some cases, I guess. And a bunch of guys go off and go romping through the woods, driving through snow, dirt roads, some technical terrain, water crossings, and it's an event that is required that you have an old split window bus. So it has to be 1967 or older. No bay window buses, no Vanagons, no Beetles, no squarebacks, none of that stuff. It has to be a split window bus. So and I wanted to do that trip. So it was kind of a bucket list thing for me. So I'm looking for a bus that's suitable for this event. I'm not going to bring a pretty bus. It's going to be something that's going to be, driven kind of hard and might take some dings and knocks along the way. So that's the why. How I found it on Facebook Marketplace. I've been looking at the Samba and Craigslist and even like various internet listings of sorts. And I found on Facebook Marketplace, I found the KRUST bus, and I was watching the listing there. I looked at some other buses, but I was kind of watching this one listing for this bus. I thought, it's probably a viable candidate, but the pricing was just not what I wanted to spend for a bus in that condition. It was more about I didn't want to overpay, as nobody would, and the price kept you know inching down a bit, 1,000 here, 2,000 there, and eventually got into a range where it made sense. Where if I wasn't going to buy it, somebody else was going to. So that's how I found it, and it was in Lapine, Oregon. So maybe that answers your question. If there's more, go ahead and ask.
No, I think it does. It even answers the next question as well, which
Okay.
was what was the original, I guess, plan? But you kind of cleared it up with the Mount
Yeah.
Shasta snow trip. So yes, so thank you. So maybe explain this then. What mechanically is unique about KRUST Bus compared to maybe other, specific standard split windows of that era?
Sure. Well, we'll start with just basically the platform as a double door panel bus, which is fairly rare. Those were used as delivery vehicles, and they may have gotten rode hard and put up wet, so to speak, and driven hard. This bus was an old junkyard bus, so it'd been sitting as there's a boneyard called Blake's Small Car Salvage in Erie, Colorado, and it was actually used to create a security perimeter around the junkyard. So they used vans and buses to make that perimeter. So this is a bus that had no running gear, no engine. It has vehicles sitting on top of it at different times. It was filled
Wow.
with transaxles and transmissions. So it was in really rough shape when it was rescued by this guy Billy. I think his last name was Billy Toomey, and he and another guy rescued, if my memory serves me right, 42 buses out of that boneyard.
Dude.
So it was, it had been resurrected. It could have gone to the crusher. So this bus is living another life. Now, by the time I got it, it was a running and driving bus. So an engine had been put in, front beam, transaxle, reduction boxes. So it was a running driving bus. And it actually, that setup is what I used for the Shasta snow trip. I just got things dialed in as well as I could. It was a single port 1600 engine. Now, before I bought it, it actually had an interior in it that was sort of a camper interior. It was a custom thing done. That kind of looked like a wooden cabin inside. It had wood paneling, kind of like shiplap style paneling. It had a wood burning stove. It had it actually had a pop top on it, like I called it a turret top. So it's a pretty much a square, a small rectangle pop top that had been put on it. It wasn't original to the bus by any stretch. Uh, and by the time the price got to the point I wanted it, and wanted to buy it at, the seller had stripped all that stuff out, which is fine for me. I just want a blank canvas for the
Sure.
Shasta snow trip. So the pop top was removed, the metal top was welded back in, the chimney hole for the wood burning fireplace was welded up. They did a good job on that. So it was just a blank canvas inside. So I put a bed in it, put a diesel heater in it. I equipped it with solar. I had a rack on it already. I put a light bar on it, CB radio, some gauges and things, oil temperature, oil pressure, tachometer, that kind of stuff. And it was a pretty serviceable bus when I got it. But then as time went on, with every trip, I'd think about what else do I need? What else do I want to do to it? And I've gone through several engines. Maybe we'll get into that at some point. But I'll pause there. I think that might answer your question. But if it didn't, let me know.
It did. It did. It was great. Thank you.
Sure.
My next question is just about the engine. You said you went through several. What is your ultimate setup now after logging all these miles?
Yeah.
I'll call you a serious road tripper. So,
Right.
what would be this, in your opinion, the ultimate engine setup for somebody that's going to log these kind of miles?
Yeah, that's highly relevant. The engine it first came with, as I mentioned, was a single port 1600. It was kind of a tired engine. And I remember asking the seller because it had no tack in it and the speedometer didn't work when I got it. So it really had very little in the way of working gauges. Um, uh, so I asked him, what speed do you drive this at? And this is my first split window bus. I'd had bay window buses, but my first split bus, so I'm really a newbie to it. And he said, oh, I drive like, 60, 65. And I thought, man, that's a little bit fast because it has reduction boxes and so on. He says, no, it had a later transaxle on it, so it's geared higher. So I thought, all right. So I drove that sucker 65, 67. Every once in a while, I'd be up to 70. and I had a tack in there that never, I didn't realize it, but the old tack I had in there used to have an old Datsun 510 back in the 80s. It was a little, plastic cheap tack. I think I probably got on out of the JC Whitney catalog, and it didn't register accurately. So I actually thought my engine wasn't spinning that fast, 3,800, 3,850 RPMs, maybe 3,900. So it's not perfect, but still manageable, right? I drove cross country like that. Now the engine that I had in the snow trip, it actually at 1600, it got the main bearings got really beat because we were climbing a 1,700-foot grade one night on the snow trip, and I didn't know it. I knew I'd lost at least one, maybe two cylinders, and we're just chugging up this grade. And I'm in first gear, pedal to the metal, just hammering it, just trying to keep it going, keep it from
Oh,
stopping. And I'm with three other people, three other buses, and we're on the radio. And they said, "Okay, Dave Broenen, we'll wait for you, and you get ahead of us, and you just keep that thing going." Then we get up to a plateau, and it's going better. We went downhill, and I got to the other side. I realized with the electronic points that I had in there, cylinder number one and two, they were cold. I got started looking, tearing into the engine, trying to figure out what's going on. But cylinders three and four, they were blazing hot. So one side of the engine was doing all the work, and the other side was just, relaxing, so to
yeah.
speak. So the bearings took a beating from one side. So my oil pressure was low. I had internal bleeding. So that was the end of that engine. I built another engine, which was a 1600 dual port with an angle 90 cam, single carb. So it was a 34 pick three. And, um, and that's what I drove cross country with the same transaxle, the same reduction boxes. And again, I was driving that thing, with that tack that was registering wrong, and I was just hauling ass across the country. So that engine was called Glitter Bomb. There's a whole story how I got that name. I don't know if we're gonna have time for it, but it was nicknamed that by some guys I was talking to, and when I was first building that engine, I was kind of having trouble with the break-in process, and I thought there might be a problem. And they asked, "Hey, is there glitter in the oil?" And so that kind of where it got the name. But I did three or two additional top-end builds on that engine. So the original heads went bad. And then I had cylinder three cratered when my timing shifted due to the electronic points. The magnet carrier shifted by 9 degrees. It advanced by 9 degrees when I was coming back from buses by the bridge a couple years ago. And then and I did another top end build after that. So and I switched to an engine called the Ripper. And that engine was an 1835 with dual carbs. It was the first time I went to dual carbs. That was a great build. But again, now I went to a proper tack. I have a 94T tack in there, and I realized, holy crap, I've been spinning this engine like 4,500 RPM cross country, and I didn't know it until I got this other proper tack in there.
dang.
So now I'm kind of cooling it. And I'm driving more about 4,000 RPM, uh, and I lost. I sucked a valve or I broke a valve on cylinder two coming back from Texas last January on New Year's Day. And then a couple months ago, cylinder four valve broke. So that was the end of that engine. And that now gets to really the answer that you're looking for. What's the ideal build? But through this process, I'm iteratively learning, what's the most durable build? What's the most going to give me, optimum power and optimum gearing? So after my, the last engine, the Ripper, as I call it, the 1835, it literally grenaded on me. The exhaust valve from cylinder four, it actually hammered around inside the cylinder. It busted through the cylinder and it blew out the top of the case while I was driving it. Thankfully, I was just 7 miles from home.
Wow.
And I didn't even hear that, any racket going on. The first time I lost a valve on New Year's Day, I was coming back from Texas with Gary Alexander and those guys. I'd been out there visiting with them. And I was coming out of Blythe, California on Interstate 10. It's 5 in the morning. I heard all this racket, and like right away, I put the clutch in, turned off the key, coasted to the side of the road. So I heard that, but this other one, I never heard it. It just beat the hell inside cylinder four for God knows how long. and then it finally blew off the top of the case. So then now it's like, well, I'm going to be going to Texas again. I've only got like 3 weeks. So I'm talking to the local shop here. I have the good fortune of being 3 miles away from a shop, really a world-renowned shop called Wolfgang International, run by Steve Phillips. I'm really blessed and grateful to have him nearby because I can be working on an engine, building an engine, doing whatever, and I know I've got a shop just 3 miles away to get parts. So I'm talking to Steve, and I said, Steve, I really like the glitter bomb. It really moved the KRUST bus down the road really nicely. And we're talking. He said, well, Dave, for a little bit more money, you could build a 2007. And for me, money wasn't the issue. It was really, I just want to build the right engine.
Right.
And he said, Steve, that's your signature engine. Now, Wolfgang International has literally built and sold thousands of the 2007. So it's a 90.5 by bore by 78 crank. So it's a mild stroker, kind of a medium grade stroker, and with Panchito heads, bigger valves, dual carbs, some Weber clones, so they're MP HPMXs. And I said, Steve, if you can have that engine done in time for me to go to Texas and meet up with Gary Alexander again, I'll hire you to build that engine. And good on him. He got that engine built. And then I got a Freeway Flyer transaxle. So for the people that want the technical details, it's a 388 ring with an 82 fourth. So it's a pretty tall fourth gear. I call it a 5-speed transaxle with no fourth gear. So the step from third to fourth is a little bit tall. And then I went from small nut reduction boxes, which are lower gearing, to big nut reduction boxes. So I got a set from him that he had a customer going to IRS setup. So they're going to delete their reduction boxes. So I bought that old set and I rebuilt it, put all new bearings in and everything. Then I mated those with the Freeway Flyer, and I mated that with the Wolfgang 2007. And I'll tell you, Joe, that is the build. It runs really cool. The compression is not real high. It's 7.7 to 1. So you can run regular fuel in it, just regular cheap 87 octane pump gas. And the thing is just as Steve he calls it a torque monster. It's got a lot of torque. It's got a balanced crank, so a counterweighted crank. So it spins real smooth. I can be now at 65 miles an hour with the transaxle setup, the reduction boxes, and then 205 tires. I got grabbers, so I got 205s on 15-inch rims. That setup, that combination, I could be running 65 miles an hour at only 3,400 RPM. I can do that all day long. And if I wanted to cruise at 70, I could, but it's really no need to. I can keep with the semis. I can pass if I need to. I can climb grades in most grades, I can climb in mild grades in fourth gear. I step down to third once in a while, but man, it's a great setup. And my bus loaded with all my gear, because I have 350 pounds of parts, tools, consumables, plus other stuff that I load in there, plus my 12-volt refrigerator, plus all the stuff on my rack, extra fuel, and everything. The thing weighs 2 tons. And this engine has no trouble pushing that box down the road. So that's my ideal build, and I strongly recommend people consider it.
So 77,000 miles in 23 months.
Actually, 78. I did another trip since we talked last, and I'm just at the end of 23 months, I logged another 1,000 miles. So 78,000 miles in 23 months.
What parts tend to fail the most on long hauls like this?
Well, now that I got my setup dialed in, the failures are going to be more just your normal parts are going to fail. Now, I'm no longer running electronic points. I've been running mechanical points and condenser for a long time now. I've had engine failures that are directly related to running electronic points, and very expensive failures, very inconvenient failures. So, I still like the idea of electronic points because the dwell doesn't change. You don't have a mechanical aspect to them. So once you get them installed and get your timing set, your timing is just set. You don't have to mess around with it. So I'm always checking my dwell and my timing. But it's a real safe process to have points. So I always carry points, always carry condenser. And I love having gauges. I'm going to talk about that for a little bit here while I'm talking about failures because it kind of ties in.
Yeah.
There's some people have the philosophy that like this, the late Bob Farmer, who I know from the Treffin, the West Coast Treffin, which is the 10-day, 1,700-mile cruise from California to Mexico down the Western coast. He'd say, Dave, if Volkswagen thought you should have gauges, they would have put them in there. Well, I would argue with Bob on that because these were meant to be economical vehicles. And everything you add in the production, each feature you add adds cost. And Volkswagen, if they added gauges, it adds to the cost. And they're pretty simple engines. But the way I'm using it, and I think the way most of us use them today in the modern roads and modern freeways, um, we need gauges because I call gauges my early warning system. I'll give you an example. Oil pressure gauge. I have oil pressure and oil temperature. Those are really good gauges to have. I was driving down the road. I was coming back from one of my many Texas trips. I think I've probably been there 9 or 10 times in the last couple of years, 2.5 years. And I'm driving back and I'm getting near this town called Iran. It looks like it's Iran with two A's. So Iran, Texas. And I'm on a remote road. There's no cell coverage. It's dark. It's nighttime. And I see my oil pressure gauge went down by about 6 pounds. Now the pressure was still acceptable, but it caught my attention. Like, the pressure went down. It wasn't going down any further. It was just stable at that point. So it got my attention. I was only a few miles away from getting to the town where I was going to get gas. So I get to town, and the first thing I do is when I got to the pumps, I look under the vehicle, and I see a small crime scene. I see some oil sitting under the bus. But what I'd learned when I dug into it is the valve cover gasket, the bottom edge of it had slipped up. So I lost crankcase pressure and I was losing oil at the same time. Now, if I didn't have an oil pressure gauge, I would have been just driving and I may or may not have noticed an oil light come on, the green oil light. Well, by that point, you have no oil pressure or a very, very low oil pressure. So damage and wear could have been done at that point. But I was able to intervene long before I lost any significant amount of oil. I probably lost about a half or three-quarter quart of oil. Pretty trivial. My oil pressure was still good. And that's happened to me actually twice. I used to use something called gasket cinch to kind of mate the valve cover gasket to the valve cover. I now use aviation sealant. So if anybody's using gasket cinch, don't use that for that purpose. It gets slippery and it allows the valve cover gasket to slide. Similar point, tachometer. When you're have an ignition problem, and usually I find it's when the condenser is failing, you start seeing the tach start to bounce. It starts doing this stuff. And sometimes it starts bouncing even more. It starts like swinging wildly.
Wow.
So that's an indication there's an ignition problem of some kind. It could be the points are mechanically failing. I've actually had them start self-destructing on me, but usually it's the condenser that's failing. So points, condenser, going back to the parts that fail, fan belt, those are a lot of the biggies that essential things to carry. I always carry a bunch of oil with me, gear oil as well. You lose those things, you consume those things over time. And then I carry parts. You might lug nuts and things of that nature that either I've never lost lug nuts, but I've run into people that lose them all the time. So they I got extra lug nuts. So I think that's it. And of course, cables, throttle cable, clutch cable, things of that nature. I'm probably forgetting some stuff, but those are some of the biggies. But
Jumper cable.
say it again.
Jumper cables.
Jumper cables, yeah, definitely anything. A jumper pack, jumper cable. I carry two jumper packs. One that I charge up, another one that you can actually charge off a low battery. It has some capacitors in it. They're like fast release capacitors. So that's one you don't have to pre-charge it. I carry all kinds of redundancy. So I could go on, and I carry extra oil filter because I have an external oil filter. I also carry an extra oil line where if I want to basically bypass my external oil cooler and my extra oil filter, if I have a catastrophic failure there, I could just kind of shunt it back, my full flow system back to the engine, and that way at least I can just get by with the inbuilt standard oil cooler that's in the fan shroud. So we could go on and on, but those are some of the biggies. But if you looked at my bus, you would see all kinds of tools, all kinds of consumables, all kinds of spares. Because when you're driving cross country, dark mountain roads, and you have no cell coverage, you got to be self-sufficient.
That brings me to a very good question. What's the craziest or most inconvenient place that you've actually ever broken down?
Yeah, there's a list, but the it was actually not in the KRUST bus. It was in this. I have a '69 bay window bus called Old Red. It's
Oh,
a
cool. Love
Westfalia
this bus.
top camper.
Great
Uh,
year.
yeah, it's a great bus, and I gave it a disc brake, so it's kind of like a 71, if you know what I mean, because the 71s have that benefit. But yeah, I really like the bus, and I used to take it on my early days of my road tripping. When I first time I did the Treff-in, I also took it once to Texas, but I got a 2007 in it. I was climbing the Ashland grade, which is a grade where you're climbing out of Oregon and you're approaching the California border. So you're heading south on Interstate 5 and you're climbing up into the Siskiyou mountain range, which is fairly treacherous. It's not a terribly tall mountain, but the grade is long. You're going from a low altitude to a pretty high summit, about 4,300 feet. And it's just this long, long, punishing grade. And I was climbing it at night and I started having a fuel starvation problem. I think it might have been a fuel pump that was not working at full capacity. That's kind of inconclusive still to this day what was going on. But um, I was climbing up this grade, and there's semi trucks just hauling ass, at least compared to how fast I was going as I'm losing momentum up this grade. And so I'm on the shoulder chugging along, and then as I'm climbing up that shoulder, there was like a barrier, a fence where I couldn't pull out into the slow truck lane. I was literally on the shoulder, and so I just had to stop. And it was at night, and I was worried about trucks hitting me. My visibility wasn't great. Now I got all kinds of marker lights on the back of the KRUST bus. There's no way you're going to miss me. But with that bus, I was literally outside, like with a flashlight, kind of shining down the trucks coming up the grade just to make sure I wasn't going to get hit. That
Dang.
was pretty scary. I've had another time climbing up the northbound part of Interstate 5 coming out of LA Basin, and it was a similar deal. I think there's 5 lanes of traffic on the what I think it's considered part of the Grapevine, although I think the real Grapevine is the southbound direction. But I'm going northbound, climbing up that grade. Same damn thing happened in the summertime, and again, everybody's hauling ass trying to get up that grade, and I didn't, and I'm like 3 lanes in, and I'm losing momentum, and I had to pull across multiple lanes of trucks off onto the shoulder. So just scary stuff. Not fun. Thankfully, I haven't had to do anything as bad as that. But yeah, that's kind of white knuckling it in those
Yeah.
situations.
Let's flip it on you. On the flip side, what's maybe the most beautiful spot or most beautiful drive that you've experienced? Maybe even what state has surprised you the most?
Yeah, wow. I in my recent trip, I did a 9,000 miles, 35 days, 22 states, 4 time zones, and one Best of Show award. That
Hey, that's what
was not
Skyway
expected
show.
on that trip. But so I saw a lot of states on that trip. And of course, there's a lot of states I've done on the West Coast where like I did 10, I conquered like 10 states, mostly on the West Coast. It's really hard to pick. Um, I live in California, and California is such a big state. And it's so diverse geologically. So it's kind of hard not to pick places like that. But perhaps Oregon, because it's so green
Mhm.
in many places, and you have these, beautiful mountain roads, coastal roads. So it's really hard to beat that. We have redwoods here in California. Um, those are pretty amazing to be able to drive through those. So it's really hard to name. I kind of give you a short list, but it's hard to pick the best. Driving across the plains is cool too. And I recently, when I was coming back from this Florida trip, I came through South Dakota, and I went to see Mount Rushmore. And the
Oh,
drive to see Mount
all those
Rushmore,
pictures. I saw those pictures. Sick.
yeah, it's as you're going to Mount Rushmore is really spectacular. Yeah, and then when you're leaving, there's a spot where, and a lot of people who have been to Mount Rushmore will know it. As you're leaving and you're going, well, I considering kind of westerly, there's a spot where you can see a profile of Washington, and they have a little spot where you can pull off there, and it's really prominent. So it's the scale of it is still pretty big, even though it's kind of high and far away. And that really, I remember seeing that when I was a kid. Our family did a trip, and we were in a station wagon, back, it was like 53 years ago. I was a little kid.
Oh,
And I remember seeing that same site, and just it was seared in my memory. So when I was leaving there on my way to get back to California, I saw it again, and it's like, oh my God, it just blew me away. So, it's going to be these little snapshots that come to mind when you ask me that question.
so cool, man. Thanks for sharing that for sure.
Sure.
I ask people that have that drive vintage buses that you utilize them the way that you do. Does driving a vintage bus actually force you to slow down and maybe experience life a little bit differently?
Yeah, it absolutely does, and that's true of buses and Beetles and probably any vintage car. The challenge with a split bus, I'll compare it to a bay window or a Vanagon, is the split buses. And if I'm not super tall, but I'm tall-ish. I'm 6 foot tall, and so when I'm sitting in the bus, I'm literally only really looking out the top 2 inches of the windshield. And so my field of view is kind of capped along the top. So I have to really be really intentional about, looking down below that visor that the bus has built into it for that fresh air intake, and then the side windows. So I have to be really intentional. But you're stopping more often. I have a tank that's I can almost get 11 gallons of gas in it if I fill it all the way up to the neck if it was empty. The fuel economy isn't that efficient. So I'm stopping every probably 2.5, 3 hours. So you're going to be able to stop and kind of get out and see things. And
Right.
I'm bus camping along the way. So I'll be stopping at places. I never stay at hotels, by the way. I never want to leave my bus alone because I have a lot of valuable things in it
Sure.
and personal possessions and things. So, and I love going to bus or to rest stops, and I'll bus camp there. And there's a lot of great rest stops around, and some of them are in really picturesque areas, like in the screen that you have behind you. That's in the Dragoon rest stop on Interstate 10, and I think it's in Arizona. Um, I think it's like east. I think it's east of Arizona before you drop down into that Phoenix, Arizona, before you drop down in the lower altitudes. And that's a beautiful spot. There's beautiful rock formations all around you. So yeah, you have to stop periodically and you get to see things. But in a split window bus, you definitely have to stop to look out the window. But I'll tell you, man, the scenery, seeing our country, we are so blessed to live in this great country that's so diverse and got so many great people in it, so many great places to go. I really love it.
Fantastic. Well said. I have traveled the country as well. A lot of driving. I've got a 38-foot bumper pole camper, and I've got a Nissan Envy. We've had a Nissan Envy in my family since 2012. It's my second one, so I got another one in 2021 when they stopped making them. But it's been, I haven't done it in a vintage bus, but I've done it in a Nissan Envy, and the headwinds in the plains, you know,
I'm in the grades.
towing I lived in Colorado Springs for 9 years, towing a 38-foot camper through the mountains, through the divide, through Kansas, through the headwinds, depending on which direction you're going. I,
Right.
I got a lot of experience, man, on the road, and I certainly understand where you're coming from. We are absolutely blessed to be, free and living in such a diverse and cool place that really, man, just in a few hours, the terrain and everything can change so much.
Yeah.
I have some similar experiences, although not driving in a classic Volkswagen. But back to you.
Well, let me just add one thing to
Yeah,
kind of
please go ahead.
I used to travel the globe when I was working in my career. I go to tech support centers all around the globe. India, Sydney, Australia, Mexico City, Belgium. I've been to the UK. I've been to Moscow, Brussels, Belgium. I mentioned that already. All around the US, um, um, Krakow, Poland, Colombia, Mexico. I've seen many, many places, so it gives me perspective, and it's really hard to beat this country. A lot of great places in the world, don't get me wrong, but yeah, so I speak from experience and just feel real grateful to see all the places I see. So anyway, back to the questions.
No,
Just want to
cool.
interject that.
Thanks for sharing that. Makes me feel even better about, what we see and what we're able to experience here in the US. So very cool. The KRUST bus has become, kind of almost a public figure, I would say, across the Volkswagen community. At what moment did you start to realize that maybe this was happening for the KRUST bus?
So, it'd be when I'd be in my travels and somebody would say, "Oh, hey, Crust Bus, I've seen that before."
We did
And
that. We did that at Skyway this year. We were like, "Oh my God, that dude's here!" So yeah, it was pretty cool.
yeah, it's not a trivial thing to see the Crust Bus in Florida because I'm all the way on the west coast here. Uh,
Right,
but
right.
yeah, it's as I was the miles started accumulating, and I made my trips to Texas, and I did the West Coast Treffen, and so I've been to Washington State, Oregon, California, Nevada, Idaho, Utah, and then along the south, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and once did Arkansas. So those are the states I'd done before I did this big, Florida trip recently. And but yeah, I'd just be, I'd done so many trips to Texas, and I go to different events in Texas.
Yeah.
Um, I'd be, Gary Alexander, and you might be familiar with the YouTube channel called VW Life. I first met him doing one of these events, a spring event, where he would invite his viewers and subscribers to go on a cruise with him. So that's where I first met him, and we became quick friends after that. And then I just go out and go to other events that he's attending, and he usually does an October event, a November event, a December event, which are generally more private. And then there's the March one that he does that's more public. So I'm going to these various events in Texas, and so these different venues in that area. Yeah, people would recognize the bus, they'd recognize me, and I don't post everything I do on Facebook. Um, I'm too busy, doing stuff, and so I maybe post a quarter or a third of what I'm doing.
I think
But I
other
do,
people do though.
yeah, and that helps a lot. I'm
Yeah.
grateful for that because yeah, it's a time commitment, as editing things and just taking that time to put some photos together and write something. It's a time commitment, and I really just want to enjoy the time with my friends and my road trip and devote my time more to creating more experiences
Yeah.
and devote less time to trying to publish stuff. So I
Yeah.
am grateful for what people publish. And I'm grateful for you for, having the interest and wanting to interview me about my adventures in the KRUST bus. So, but yeah, that's really how the KRUST bus, in my mind, started. It's like, wow, it's taken on a life of their own, its own, because people are, hey, the KRUST bus. And I was coming back from one of my Texas trips, and actually, I think I was coming back from buses by the bridge last January, and I'm coming up Interstate 5, and I'm getting close to Gilroy, California, where I'm going to cut off on a highway called 152, and I'm going to go visit family in Gilroy, California. So I'm getting kind of in Central California, mid-state, and I get a text message, a Facebook message from a guy saying, "Hey, Dave, I just saw you cruising north on Interstate 10 and in the Interstate 5 in the KRUST bus," and it's like, and I kind of wrote back kind of tongue in cheek. I wasn't sure who it was. I didn't know if we were Facebook friends or not because there's a lot of people that have friended me, through my travels. And I go, oh, gee, how did you know it was me? I mean, it says crust and on the big letters on the side of the bus, as you see in the picture behind you.
Can't miss
And yeah, you can't miss it. And he said, oh, well, I asked AI. I asked, I think he said Chat GPT, and he sent me what it sent him. So apparently he just went on and said, who is the crust? What is the crust bus? And it created this big output that had my name, had some history of me, had some history of the bus,
dude,
and
man.
it was a little bit creepy.
That
So
is.
yeah, so yeah, that's happened a couple of times.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, actually.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, they used to tell you like 5, 6, 7 years ago in technology, they'd say, you should Google your own name and see what
right,
pulls up, right? They used to tell
right,
you that like when you'd go work, start a new corporate position, they'd be like, Google your name and see what kind
yeah,
of reputation you have.
right.
Times have changed. Now you go to Chat GPT and you put your name or some info in there about yourself, and it'll spit out a whole encyclopedia of your life. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of freaky.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. In your travels, I'm sure you've met a lot of people. You speak often about the kindness of strangers. Give me some examples of maybe some VW community stories that you have of maybe some special moments where people may have opened up their houses or their shops, or maybe just some experiences that have impacted you.
Yeah, I'm going to try to give you a condensed version of three because it's so the first one is coming back from Buses by the Bridge a couple years ago, and cylinder three cratered on me. The magnet magnet carrier for my electronic points. It's the bottom reading style as opposed to a side reading style of electronic points. The magnet had shifted 9 degrees advanced, and I didn't know it. And it happened while I was leaving Buses by the Bridge. Because up until then, I put 5,000 miles on that build. The engine was running great. It was awesome. And so anyway, and I didn't know it, but cylinder three cratered on me because my timing in advance, and it was detonating, and I didn't know that. I didn't hear it. So anyway, now I'm stranded by Needles, California, several miles outside of Needles, California, and I put a Facebook post out, just letting people know, here's the latest installment in the KRUST Bus Chronicles,
Yeah.
uh, and uh, a couple of things that happened. Some guys that were leaving Buses by the Bridge, they stopped to help me out, and we took some photos. We were kind of having fun, kind of laughing about it, and I pulled out the push rods for cylinder three, so I could just kind of take the hobbled bus and limp to Needles, California. And those guys kind of came with me to make sure I got to Needles, got to a safe place where I bus camped for the night. So that was nice. But the point I'm getting at on this particular instance was uh, a guy who I just met. We were really just acquaintances at Buses by the Bridge. His name is Ryan White. So, shout out to Ryan White and his wife, Tawny. Great people. He messages me and he says, hey, Dave, if you need a tow bar, I have one. All you need to do is, find a way to get it. But I live in Lake Havasu, where I just come from, and I wasn't that far, wasn't that terribly that far away. I don't know, maybe 20 miles away. And then another guy, Rod Fadden. So shout out to Rod and Leanne Fadden. Thank you guys. Rod said, hey, Dave, we're still here with our truck because they take a fifth wheel to attend Buses by the Bridge just as like visitors. They don't take their Vanagon there. So he said, I can help you out if you want. So I said, hey, if you can go over by Ryan's house and pick up a tow bar, that'd be great. Now, so those were two really cool things that happened. And sure enough, Rod did pick up the tow bar and bring it to me. And I was able to get a rental truck with Rod's help. Went to a U-Haul place and got a rental truck, and I towed my bus home. But I was talking to Ryan before I actually got the tow bar, and I said, hey, man, I'll just buy the tow bar from you because, I don't know when I can get it back to you. And, you can just go buy yourself another one. He said, no, I'd actually kind of like that tow bar back because I made it and I kind of like it. And he says, don't worry about it. I know you'll be back. I thought, wait a second. We're just acquaintances. I'll be back. Who knows when I'll be back? Maybe Buses by the Bridge, but I could have your tow bar for a freaking year at that rate. But he just trusted me that much. And then, so there's that piece. And then fast forward to last December, I'm going to Texas to see Gary Alexander and kind of some of the so-called usual suspects, kind of close circle of friends to do a camping trip in Texas at the place called the Colorado Bend State Park in Texas. And I'm 800 miles into my 2,000-mile trip, and my clutch starts self-destructing. It's sort of functional, but I could tell it started to just self-destruct. So I'm just kind of nursing my bus and my clutch and trying to get there. And now it's Christmas Day. I'm in Menard, Texas. I'm 98 miles away from the camping venue. And I thought, hey, if I can just get to the camping venue, I can pull the engine. I think I have the parts I need to fix this. I had a pressure plate. I had a new throwout bearing. I didn't have I had the disc, but I didn't have the pressure plate. I should be correct there. I had the disc, the friction disc, but not the pressure plate. So I had two of the three parts I might need. And anyway, I'm at the filling station in Menard, Texas. Now the filling station, the pumps are open, but because it's Christmas Day, the Lowe's grocery store was closed that's associated with it. And so it's just me, and then there's this other guy with this truck on the other side of the pumps. We're both filling up, and I said, "Hey, Merry Christmas." He said, "Hey, Merry Christmas to you." And he starts asking me about my bus. I said, "Hey, I'm just 98 miles away from my camping venue. My clutch is dying on me, but I'm so close. All I have to do is nurse it 98 more miles, and I can work on the clutch. I can pull the engine." And it occurred to me while I was talking to him, it's like I'm going to be working on gravel, which I kind of knew, but I wonder how the camp or the park police or whatever the rangers are going to feel about me taking all these greasy bits out of my bus, pulling the engine and putting a new clutch in. And he said, "Well, hey man, I got a ranch just a few miles up the road, and I got a shop there with a big carport awning. And if you need to stay there a while, I got an apartment next to my horse stables. You can stay there. You can sleep there. There's showers and everything." And it's like, holy crap! So sure enough, so I follow him over there. I met his wife. We chatted, and I go to the place where I'm going to set up and work on the bus. And then I called Gary, and also the Brew Dub guys. You know Craig and Angie, right?
Yeah, I do.
So
They're
yeah,
way down here, close to me. Not real close, but close to me.
right. But they're in Florida,
Yeah, yeah,
so kind of near Tampa. And I let Gary know. So Gary brought a pressure plate, which turned out I needed that. Uh, and uh, and Craig and Angie were coming to join us for the trip, and I'd met them on other trips prior. So I call it the Christmas miracle. We spent Christmas Day night, if that makes sense, not Christmas Eve, but Christmas Day night, pulling my engine. So I had the engine pulled out by the time they got there. Angie and Craig showed up, and then a little while later, Gary showed up, and we swap out. It turned out I needed a pressure plate. The friction disc that I had was okay, but I put a new one in, and I needed a new throw up bearing. So we put all that in and buttoned it up. And actually, I told those guys, "You go on your way. Now I got all the parts I need. I can get the engine put back in. I'll meet you guys tomorrow. You guys go to the campsite." Well, it turned out Craig and Angie and Gary and I had a hell of a time getting that engine back in. So I'm glad, Gary said, "Hey, man, we're all here. Let's just get this thing stuffed in."
yeah. Right.
So we all wrestled with it. I've done this lots of times on my own. So we got that in. So anyway, so that's the second of three stories. And then the final one is at the end of that trip, I'm driving back. I'm leaving Arizona. It's 5 in the morning. It's New Year's Day. I mentioned it earlier. That's where I lost the exhaust valve for cylinder two, made all that racket.
Yeah,
Well, yet again, like I always do, I put a post out there saying, "Hey, here's the latest installment of the KRUST Bus Chronicles." You see a picture of my bus at the dark morning hours with a semi blurred in the background whizzing by and my tail lights on, my engine bay light on. Um, and I get a message from, guess who? Ryan White in Lake Havasu area. And he said, "Hey, Dave, I got a service bay in my shop that's available. You can bus camp there. I have tools. If you have parts, I might have the parts you need. If you need a hand, I give you a hand. The shop has water, heat, power, a bathroom. You can stay there as long as you want." So instead of me driving back home and then emptying my bus and getting it set up for buses by the bridge, repacking it and coming back down, which would be about a 1,500 mile round trip, 1,600 mile round trip. I just went 118 miles. I got my AAA hauled my bus over there, and I spent several days at Ryan's place. So I pulled my engine on New Year's Day, and I got another head on it that Ryan had, and I got it serviceable. And I stayed for Buses by the Bridge, and I stayed several days later and helped him with some painting projects and things to kind of reciprocate, the help they were. But I was just bus camping in his shop for like the span of, not including the time for Buses by the Bridge and the pre-line, but I spent probably a week and a half of the overall time at his property, hanging out with his family, having dinner with the family. His wife would say, "Hey, tell Dave we're having dinner." And so I'd run up the street to where his house is and hang out with him and his wife and their three kids and have dinner. It's really amazing. So, the Volkswagen community is really your Volkswagen family.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Nice.
within every crisis is a seed or one or more equal or greater opportunities is my favorite saying.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Before I touch on that saying, which I have and I want to touch on, I wanted to say this. You talk about how unscheduled maintenance events are really for you, like you say, you believe breakdowns are where the adventures begin.
Yeah.
And from those stories you just told, clearly,
Yeah.
clearly, right? But that quote, where does that mindset come from? You know?
Yeah, you,
Yeah,
you know, it comes from back in the day, I used to listen to audio tapes in my car, not MP3s or streaming, but I listened to audio tapes, a little cassette player, and this old Datsun 510 I had as I drive to work and back at about a half-hour commute. And there was this guy called Jack Canfield, and he had an audio cassette series. It was a seminar that he had recorded on audio cassettes. It was like a 6 cassette series called Self-Esteem and Peak Performance. It was basically about an achievement and manifesting the life that you want, success principles kind of audio series. And he'd talk about within every crisis uh, is a seed to one or more opportunities. And I just sort of expanded that, within every problem or crisis, a seed to one or more equal or greater opportunities. So I just sort of enhanced it a little bit more. But I'll tell you, Joe, having that philosophy as you encounter any problem in your life, any challenge, any crisis in your life, it totally shifts things. So rather than just thinking, "Oh man, this sucks, I want to be here by this certain time, or this didn't turn out the way I want," we get so attached to an outcome and we get all, it's easy to get upset and stressed out. But if you instead just like embrace the idea, it's like, wow, okay, I wasn't expecting this development, this unscheduled maintenance event or whatever, this problem.
sure.
So, but now you start looking at, well, there must be something really great in store for me. And it really just shifts everything. And I like to think it really truly does change the outcome. And when I look at all the blessings and all the great fortune that I've had as a result of the challenges and problems that I've had in my life in general, as well as the unscheduled maintenance events in my Volkswagens, it I cannot think of any example where it hasn't proven to be true.
I think a big part of that is you and attitude. Attitude, I say all the time to a lot of the companies that I do coaching for, attitude determines outcome.
Yeah,
When you look at life, if you look at it from a negative perspective, you can usually expect negative outcomes.
right.
When you take, lemons and turn them into lemonade, or you take negative situations and turn them into things positive, you've got a positive attitude. Your
Yeah,
attitude determines that positive outcome. So, it's interesting across, different educational backgrounds and, different experiences through life. It doesn't matter. It's still your attitude is your attitude, regardless, right?
yeah.
Why
That's the saying, your attitude determines your altitude.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely. That is a saying. Why do you
yeah,
think people though nowadays are so quick to panic when life might just, kind of become a little bit inconvenient or, maybe a little rough or tough?
yeah. It depends on who they associate with,
Yeah, okay.
what input that they digest. So, manage your input, folks. It makes a big difference.
It does. It does. Why do you think VWs old imperfect VWs connect emotionally so well? Or yeah, why do you think they connect with people the way they do, even more than modern cars ever could or ever will?
Yeah. It's hard not to love the humble Volkswagen. You know, they're even back in the day when they were a really common car, uh, they they didn't have a lot of power. They really didn't have a lot of sex appeal. They didn't have a lot of, whizzy features. They weren't fast. And frankly, even though the engineering is pretty cool, compared to other cars, they really weren't that reliable, right?
Yeah.
Unless you maintain them really, really well,
Right.
according to, the manual. And but so there's that aspect of it, just kind of this it's kind of hard not to love this humble little car, kind of root the underdog. But also, I think just the Volkswagen community, we're going to look out for each other. And it's probably true in like the nautical world, and like you have a camper that you tow, the people, the camping world, and of course the Volkswagen world, people just sort of look out for each other. And we have empathy for those that have a breakdown and unscheduled maintenance event, as I like to call it. And I even see that with people that are not necessarily Volkswagen people. I had this occasion. I was coming through. I think I might have been in Texas, and I was going from one major road to another road. But to make the transition, I had to take kind of like a surface road. And it was daytime, and I'm cruising down this little surface road. And something caught my eye. And it's like, oh, that's one of those rubber wheel chucks that Harbor Freight sells, like the molded rubber one that has like the little handle on the back.
Little
And
triangle.
yeah, it's a little triangle, and
Yeah,
and I
I've seen
already
them
had
on
a
the
few of
road.
them. Sorry,
I've seen them on the road before.
yeah, and I already have a few of them, but it's like I could always use another one, right? So,
Right.
so I wasn't going that fast, so I stop, I turn around, and I pull back, and I just pulled up. Let's say it's right here, and I pulled up, and I pulled up to it, and as I'm getting out the door, I look in my rearview mirror. I was only there for a moment, right? I just stopped, and I just get ready to get out, look in my mirror. There's already a white pickup truck behind me. And the guy's like, "Hey man, you okay?" So it wasn't even the Volkswagen community, but it was people in general have that, that they're willing to, look out for the lesser vehicle on the road, which is that humble Volkswagen.
Yeah,
But the Volkswagen community itself, you just take that and, kick it up several notches.
sure. So the phrase drive your bus, that's a phrase that resonates pretty deeply with folks, even people like you just said that might not even own a Volkswagen. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, are you referring to my hashtag drive your bus?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and drive your VW for those that don't have buses. It kind of goes back to some of the other things we were talking about, the opportunities that come from that. You could have a vehicle that's a show car, and you keep it in your garage and you polish it. You take it out once in a while for a Sunday drive or take it to shows, and that's fine. Um, but I love the idea of having something that you can drive and not be afraid for it to get a little ding or a little scratch or a little, rock chip or something of that nature. And the KRUST bus is certainly that vehicle. Now, it really hasn't taken any meaningful damage since I got it. I've taken on some pretty ambitious drives, but driving your bus, it's the gateway to adventure. It's the doorway to friendships and adventure and just all of these great priceless memories that you're going to build and these relationships that you're going to foster. It's like I was telling you about Ryan White. He lent me a tow bar, and then a year later, he's opening up his shop to me, and I'm hanging out with him as a family. And each contact you have with somebody, because I was driving my bus,
Right.
allows me to cement that friendship and deepen that friendship even more. And it's every event I go to, I'll see people again, and I might not remember everybody's name all the time, but I'll see them again, and we'll solidify that relationship even more, and maybe I'll even remember their name the next time. For those of you that have had to remind me of their name more than once, so yeah. So that's where Drive Your Bus comes from. That's where the adventure comes from. That's where the fun comes from.
Okay. What do you think the biggest misconception is about owning a vintage VW? More importantly, what advice would you give somebody that's actually looking to buy their first bus?
Yeah. I think the misconception, I think, would be the folks that have, kind of a rosy illusion about, oh, how, I mean, it is great, how great it's going to be. And I know how great it is, but they don't have that realistic element. They think, oh, I'll get a bus and I'll go on all these adventures. But you have to be prepared for the unscheduled maintenance events. You have to be prepared to do some work. From time to time, I'll ask myself, kind of in my mind, I'll tally up the amount of hours I spent driving my bus versus the amount of hours I spent working on it. And I really don't know what the ratio is. It's not exactly a 1 to 1, 1 hour of work for 1 hour of driving and enjoying it. But there's a fair amount of work that put into to driving it. So there's that kind of you have to be realistic, I think is the kind of the idea behind it. But I still recommend it because you're going to meet some great people, be part of a great community, and you could have other cars. You could have I think very often people have these really swanky, Maseratis, Lamborghinis, Bugattis, Porsches, and so on. They're great vehicles, but I'll tell you, the amount of smiles you get, hand waving, thumbs up, horn toots, people that talk to you at gas stations. I've had people invite me to their house at gas stations.
I
Like a nice, as in,
don't
I
know
think
if
as
I
a,
should go with you or think this is weird.
yeah. Well, this one particular couple I met, I think it was in Alabama on my Florida trip, my recent Florida trip, and this guy drove. They were like a minivan or an SUV, and there was an older guy talking to me, and his wife's in the car, and they were actually like I think they were Mennonites. The lady was wearing like a black little head, thing, little beanie bonnet, and but really, really nice people. And they said, "Hey, come on over to our house. You can bus camp there and come over and visit." And I said, "I'm on a road trip. I have a schedule, but thank you." And the lady said, "I'll make you catfish." And I go, oh man, now you're throwing down the hammer. So, but we exchanged numbers, and I would not be shy about messaging them and saying, hey, I'll stop by and say hi. So having a Volkswagen opens the doors to those things because people will talk to you.
Right, right.
And yeah, you can make those connections.
Yeah. So somebody out there listening, maybe they're terrified to take their first big road trip. You've got all this experience with big road trips.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for them?
Yeah. Well, start with smaller trips, and then get used to doing the maintenance things. When you start driving long enough, where you have to do valve adjustments and oil changes, those are longer trips. For some people, just doing a 400 mile round trip is a big trip, and I'm going to do one coming up. For me, it's a short trip. It's just like a little excursion up to Grants Pass, Oregon, and back. But I'll be climbing a big, Siskiyou mountain grade up, and then the Ashland grade coming back. Um, but be prepared to do the maintenance work, kind of cut your teeth on that, get used to adjusting your valves, changing your oil, setting your dwell and timing, adjusting your brakes. It's another thing you need to be prepared to do. And if you have just drum brakes all the way around, you got to do it on all four wheels. Just get used to doing those things. And as you start with the shorter trips, you can start extending them. Get used to how hot your engine gets. In the summertime, is your engine getting real hot? If you can't touch your dipstick when you're checking your oil, your engine's getting kind of hot. I encourage people to get gauges. Some people call them worry gauges. I call them data, early warning systems. So if you have your gauges, then you can know how your vehicle's performing on those longer trips. Around town, not so much of a big deal. The longer trips, you're going to be challenging your vehicle and your engine. And so if you have oil temperature, oil pressure, ideally a tach, maybe a head temp gauge. I have a wideband gauge on mine, so I know what my air fuel mixture is, so I can get my jetting dialed in. That's probably more than what most people need, but I really like having oil temp, oil pressure, and a tach. Those would be like my minimums. And
Uh,
then you have some feedback, so you can know if it's safe to go on a longer trip or not before it's too late, before you blow up an engine.
So I'm in, gosh, where was I? Panhandle of Texas. It's pretty far north as you can go before
Yeah.
you are right out of the state. And I pull over to get gas with my 38-foot bumper pole camper. And I look back at the driver or the passenger side back wheel. It's a double axle trailer, and the center of it's just glowing red hot. I'm like, uh-oh, Surely that can't be good, right? I don't know how long it's been going like that
Yeah.
for. So I pull over into the KOA and I call, a camper person to come and, mechanic come look at it. He's got to replace the whole freaking axle. He said I was about to, spin the wheel off and, cause a
Right.
huge, big to do. It took several days. It was $3,000. It was crazy. But here's my point. He told me about this temperature gauge that would
Oh,
communicate with me that not only would monitor my air pressure but would also tell me the temperature of my wheels and
yeah.
so I knew if my wheels started getting hot, like, dude, there's an issue, pull over. So
Right.
when you say that about gauges, it's like you said, man, it's data. Anybody that wouldn't want data when you're on a road trip and I got 5 kids, I got all my kids in the car, like, dude, I'm not
Yeah.
looking for problems. I'm looking for
Right.
solutions.
That's a
So
good.
yeah, I like that. I stand with you on that. Good stuff
Right.
though. Good advice too. Tell me this: what's left on your bucket list? You've done so much. You've been all over the place. Is there anything left that you haven't tackled? Is there any type of a dream road trip that you have that you haven't planned or haven't done yet?
Sure. Well, your bucket list wise, kind of the first thing that comes to mind is it'd be kind of cool to touch on all the 48 lower 48 states and maybe even hit Alaska. So far, I've done 38 states with the KRUST bus. Some of them are just little excursions where I just take a detour and clip the corner of Colorado to say I've checked that off the list, but I haven't like really done Colorado on my bus. Um, so there's that. Um, as far as other trips, I've done Moab in the KRUST bus, which is an off-road event, the Lynn Ottinger Moab trip. I've done the 100 miles at 10K, which is not a very well-known event, but it's, a high altitude cruise. Um, I've done the Treffen multiple times. I like going to these longer road trips. So I'd like to go to Florida again. I think I'd like to do the No Do show
Oh hell,
and
yes. Great one.
the Dubs over the Skyway Bridge.
Hey, buddy, that's my show. Heck yeah, bring it on again. We'd love to
Yeah,
have.
healthy Dubs. Woo!
Yeah,
Uh,
that's April every year. So
yeah. So, and then I get to see friends and family along the way on that trip. So really, and then there's sort of a milestone I want to get. I didn't start out with this goal to, cruise across the country in the Crust Bus. I really just wanted this bus for this Mount Shasta snow trip, and then one thing led to another, and I really, I got the bus dialed in for as my road trip bus. It's not the most comfortable bus. My bay window, my 69 bay window, it's way more comfortable. But I just love the Crust Bus, and of course everybody recognizes it.
yeah.
But I kind of want to get now that I'm at 78,000 miles in 23 months. I'm kind of aiming for 100,000 miles by the end of this calendar year.
Wow.
Uh, and at this rate, I'm basically logging about 40,000 miles a year. So that'd be kind of cool just to kind of hit that 100,000 mile threshold in a fairly, short time span.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of what's on my mind. But I'll tell you, as far as the build itself, I love that build. So I'm happy to just kind of go anywhere at this point. I don't really stress about it. I wouldn't mind going to New England and seeing it in the fall, maybe. That'd be kind
Wow.
of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome, man. Years from now, when you look back at the legacy of Dave Broenen, Crust Bus, the whole vibe, what do you hope people remember most about you?
It's pretty simple, I think. It gets down to humanity. And through this process of going on these road trips, this thing that really stands out for me is just the friendship and the love and the camaraderie that you get with meeting and seeing and visiting and troubleshooting,
Mm.
solving problems, unscheduled maintenance events with folks along the way. It just, especially in this trip that I did to Florida, where I first met you and many other people, I had so much fun and built such, great contacts, great friendships. I got to spend a lot more time with Craig and Angie. They were kind enough to let me bus camp at their house, and we had some really nice visits together, separate from shows. and Dan Kilbride, who's my bus brother, because his bus was pulled out of the same boneyard as mine, and we were actually in the same batch of four.
Yeah,
But it's really,
I
you
noticed
know,
that.
I don't want to make it about me, but I guess, you do ask the question. I want people to feel like I treated them with dignity and respect and kindness and generosity. And I try to spread that. I want people to feel welcome in my company. So, if anybody, sees me on the road, you run into me, you see me drive by, or you see me at a gas station, you see me at an event, don't be shy about coming up and saying hi. I'll be happy to meet you, exchange a few words, and and enjoy some friendship and some camaraderie. And we may or may not ever see each other again, but you never know. And I didn't know if I'd see Craig and Angie again, and now we're great friends. And your family, your community just grows from that. So yeah, I just want people to know that to feel that I felt that they felt treated with dignity and respect and kindness and generosity and friendliness.
You're an awesome guy, man. You're an awesome guy.
Thanks, Joe.
I could tell from your energy from the first time that I met you in person. A great guy. I'm pleased that you came onto the show. Thank you so much. Last question I've got for you, and then I'm going to let you get on your way this evening. Describe the Volkswagen community for me in just one word.
I mean, community is I think really captures the essence of it, because it is a community. And what are the elements of a community? Is it
Yeah.
people look out for each other, they support each other, they support each other, they love each other, they give each other a lending hand, a helping hand. Yeah, so it's community.
Okay, man.
Community is a community. It's a family.
I can dig it. I can dig it. Like I said, man, thank you so much. Just tell us real quick, if somebody doesn't know you or doesn't know how to get in touch, where can they follow the KRUST Bus Adventures? How can they get in touch or follow along with you, maybe online or on social media?
Yeah, the best place to find me is on Facebook. It's if you just look up the hashtag KRUST Bus, KRUST with a K, hashtag KRUST Bus, that's going to lead you to various things, mostly to Facebook. There have been I've been interviewed some other times, and that hashtag will probably take you to some like a YouTube video or two. So that's the best way. But you can find me on Facebook under my name, Dave Broenen. But just look up KRUST Bus, and that'll take you there. It'll take you to some Instagram stuff. The guy that I bought the bus from. His name is Jake Callahan, and he also has posted some things. So you'll see some stuff that he posted as well under the same hashtag. So just be discerning and know, okay, was it Dave Broenen that posted that, or is it Jacob Callahan? But
Okay.
most of the stuff you'll see is the stuff that I posted.
Okay. Do you have a final message for the Volkswagen community?
Drive your bus. Drive your
Go-
bus, go on adventures, and make new friends.
Yeah, what I learned from you and from your adventures is that exactly. Go drive your bus. Stop waiting for perfect.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Dub Life Diaries. Thanks for riding along with us and diving into these incredible stories of the people in the dubs that drive their dreams. If you love today's episode, don't forget to subscribe or hit that follow button so you never miss an adventure. Do you have a story to tell or know somebody else who's living the dub life? Awesome! Reach out to us. You can find us on all socials at Dub Life Diaries or shoot me an email. I'm not hard to find. dublifediaries@gmail.com. Until next time, keep the engines humming and the wheels turning, and always follow the road that inspires you. This is Joe Person. I'm signing off. I'll catch you on the next ride.